Good morning and welcome to our video on school finance. In today's challenging times, it's important for families and members of our community to have a basic understanding of how schools are financed. There are always fiscal challenges facing us, and we are impacted by the financial challenges at both the federal, state, and local levels. The purpose of our video is to educate our members of the community about the basic fundamentals of school finance. Schools are financed in a number of ways, from federal dollars to state dollars to local dollars. And balancing those limitations and those challenges with the many needs that schools face today can be very difficult. The importance that we place on such things as daily attendance and having our children show up to school all play a factor. We've been very fortunate to have subject matter experts on school finance with us, and we'll share with them their comments and their responses to some of the questions and challenges facing school districts today. So we hope you enjoy our video.
Let me begin. One of the challenges that many in the public don't understand is how are schools funded? Can you share with us how your school district is funded?
Yeah. The primary source of how we're funded is when kids come to school. I mean, it's called average daily attendance, and you might hear ADA is the term that's used. So when kids come to school, that's how schools are funded. The more that kids attend school, the more money that we receive. The more students that we have, the more money we receive. That's really the primary source of funds that we get. We also get money from grants, donations. We have community support, things like that. The federal government supports us too. So those are really the ways that schools are funded.
Dr. Novak, many people think that a lot of the funding comes from state property tax or local property tax. I'm assuming you also get some federal money as well. Can you share with us the different sources of where that money comes from?
Sure. We do get a fair amount of money from the property taxes, but that really only accounts for maybe about 10% of our money that we receive. We receive about 75% of our money comes from the state, just the general state funds, and then another 10% from federal government. Contrary to what other people believe is that the lottery might provide a lot of additional funds for us. It is a really important source, but it really only provides about 2% of our budget. And then the other 2% of our budget is from local sources.
We've had many challenges recently in the state of California regarding the state's budget. Can you tell us how does the state budget impact what goes on here at your school district?
Because we're primarily funded through the state, we do get our property taxes, but then it's backfilled, as I said, with state aid. When there's an economic crisis and the funding is not fully flowing to a school district, that can create obvious problems. It's kind of similar to a household budget. A couple will plan their family budget through the course of a month, course of the school year, and if one of the incomes is reduced, it has an impact on your purchasing power and your discretionary income in terms of what you're going to spend through the course of the year. Same as in the school district. If there's an economic crisis like we've had for the last 5 years, when the funding to the school is reduced, we have less funds in order to operate the school district. The challenge, we're really a service organization, a service industry. About 90% of our budget is personnel related. So if you're reducing the funding to schools, we have people that we have to pay for salaries, health and welfare, other statutory payroll benefits. And if we don't have enough funding, we've got to make those very difficult decisions in terms of programs and services that we have to reduce. And anytime you're dealing with programs and services, you're dealing with people. And that's what really makes this a difficult time frame in terms of dealing with people when we have an economic crisis, because you're really impacting people's lives, not just the individual, but their family and their kids as well.
Yes, we get information or money from IDEA grants to fund special education, and we get Title I money for No Child Left Behind, Title II for staff development, and we get Title III funds to support our English language learners.
So it sounds like
the challenges at the state level have a dramatic impact to your funding and your budgeting at the school district level.
A great deal of impact on us, and it's hard for us to make decisions and make changes at the last time, as I said, because we have so many contractual agreements with people. Our teachers are all on contract and negotiated agreements that may last for multiple years. So it's hard for us to have fluctuations in our revenue during the year.
Dr. Novak, can you share with us, there's been a lot of comment that local school boards don't really have a lot of control over the finances and the money they have. Can you share with us some of your comments, and is that true or not true?
It's both. It's true and it's not true. There's parts of the budget that are restricted and some of the budget that is unrestricted. So all of the restricted parts of the budget, which in Long Beach is about 30% of the budget, there's a lot of strings attached. So when we receive the money, we have to spend it a certain way. On the other hand, the other 70% of our budget, it's unrestricted. We do have control over that. It gets a little bit tricky though, because about 88% of our budget is people. And so it's salaries for teachers, salaries for our custodial staff, maintenance, all the workers that we have here. That ties up a big piece of our budget. So there really isn't a lot left when you say that 30% is restricted, and then out of our entire budget, 88% is for people. And then if you think about the other remaining 12%, a lot of that is for utilities and things that we are pretty much out of our control. That leaves just a small amount of money that we're able to really do anything extra with.
When elected officials take office, there have been agreements that have made previously that they have to honor. So they may come in, to a new term with negotiated contracts in place with their bargaining units that have to be honored. They have accepted grants and entitlements, which have obligated the district to accept money and to spend it for the purpose involved. So a lot of times you're having to say, you can't spend this differently. You're obligated to do these things.
Karen, there are a lot of words that get thrown around when we talk about school finance that I think many people don't understand. And one of them is categorical funding. Can you share with us a little bit about what that specifically means, categorical funding?
Categorical fundings are grants and entitlements that we get from states and local agencies. We have signed a contract with those agencies to perform the tasks that those grants and entitlements are obligated for.
Money like for English language learners, there's for gifted and talented students, the arts and music program. There's a number of categoricals that have strings attached. You have to spend the money exactly the way that the state government says that you should spend it. On the one hand, that's good that we get more money. These are all very good programs. But the hard part is that what might be good in San Francisco to spend money may not be the way that Long Beach wants to spend the money. But unfortunately, the way it works, you have to spend it the way the state dictates it. And that's really a struggle that school districts are dealing with when you talk about local control and what discretion that boards have over money. It would be nice if they really change it, and there are some things in the legislation right now that's looking to change the law, that would allow school districts to say, what works in San Francisco might not work in Long Beach, and we'd rather spend the money this way because it's the best thing for our kids.
Karen, as part of the budgeting process for school districts, if a parent wanted to see the school district budget and they were going through it, one of the things they may see are columns such as restricted money and unrestricted money. Can you share with us what those definitions mean?
Our general fund is made up of two portions, like you said, unrestricted dollars and restricted. At this district, 65% of the funds are unrestricted, and that funds about 93% of salaries and benefits for our staff. Because we're in the business of educating children, it takes a lot of people to perform that task, and our primary budget for the unrestricted dollars are staff costs. The restricted dollars were what we were talking about, the categoricals, and those have obligations tied to them and are restricted for the purpose that they were intended by the grantor.
Earlier you spoke about the relationship between the money and a student when we talked about school funding.
I'm assuming you're talking about ADA, and that's a common thing that we hear in the community about the importance of ADA. Can you elaborate a little bit on what ADA represents, and the importance it's placed on your district?
Okay. ADA stands for average daily attendance. It's the amount of time that your child is actually at school in the classroom. If there's 100 days of school and your student attends school every single day, your student earned 100% of his ADA or her ADA. If your student was absent for 5 days, that student is only generating 95% of the ADA times whatever the dollar amount is. Now the impact, there's really two impacts about ADA, and we tend to focus much more on the financial part when we talk about ADA because that's the amount of dollars that are going to come in. So if you take a school district enrollment and then you multiply it by what the average daily attendance is. So if you have an average of students attending class 95% of the time, it's going to be that much less that you're going to get times your funding amount. The more important part of it, that's tied obviously to the finance, is if your children aren't at school every day, it has an impact on student learning and instruction. And that's really the biggest focus that we need to put our attention on in terms of attendance, is students being in class and learning. But there's a tie. There's attendance and learning, and there's attendance that impacts finance.
There are approximately 1,000 school districts in the state of California, and most of them are funded the way you spoke about earlier. There are some of the districts that are what we call basic aid districts. Can you help explain to us what the difference is between a basic aid district and one who receives the more standardized funding that you talked about?
Okay. Let's take the analogy, you've got a bucket and it's empty. And for a regular school district, the revenue limit comes in, or the funding comes in from property taxes. So when you pour, say, your property taxes and it only fills the bucket halfway, the state's going to pour the balance in to fill it up with state aid. On a basic aid district, when you pour the property tax funding into the bucket, it fills it to the top and actually has a little bit that spills over. Those school districts get all of the property taxes plus the spillage, and they don't need any state aid. So they're actually getting more revenue generated from the property taxes just because of the area in which the school district resides.
One of the challenges with any school district is the teachers that we have in the classroom. And a common comment is we need to pay our teachers more. Can you share with us some of the challenges you have, and are we paying our teachers enough?
Yeah. To answer the last question, I don't think so. But I believe that's systemic and really cultural. I think that the state, again, going back to what I said earlier, needs to value education more than they currently do. There needs to be more money set aside for education, and I believe that teachers should be paid more. The challenge, though, that we have, and I talked about it earlier, is that 88% of our budget is salaries. There's only so much to go around, and when you have to still heat the schools and keep them running and take care of all the other things, buy books, there isn't that much left. So really right now, most of the money that we receive is going to salaries, and the biggest chunk of that is to teacher salaries. So we would love to pay our teachers more money because frankly think that they deserve it. They're the most important role in the child's education. But it's just a question of economics and math, and there just isn't enough to go around right now. What would be nice, instead of saying maybe instead of a bigger piece of the pie just needs to get bigger.
What other financial or fiscal challenges do you face on a daily basis within your school district?
Under my umbrella of responsibilities, I've got fiscal services, which is kind of related to what we've been talking about. I also oversee health and welfare. So with the increasing costs of medical insurance, we have to deal with that as a district and negotiate that with employees. Deal with workers' compensation, employees that get hurt on the job. There's aspects to that. transportation costs, maintenance operations. Similar to your household budget, if your roof got a leak and you weren't planning for it, how are you going to fix it and where are you going to get the funding? We've got the similar issues in schools. We want to maintain our schools so that they are appropriate to house our students and our staff during the course of the school year.
Well, thank you for spending time understanding, or hopefully understanding, a little bit more about school finance. As you can see, there are many challenges that local schools face. And the challenges range from the local level, the state level, as well as the federal level. And each one of those impacts our local schools tremendously. Our subject matter experts have provided, hopefully, better understanding as well as a good explanation of all of the challenges they face on a daily basis. From school programs to attendance to managing pots of money in certain areas, the challenges remain significant for our local schools. And you as parents and members of the community can help assist us by advocating for schools, by making sure our students show up every day to attend their local schools.